Hey everybody, it's Nerdicane coming at you with another video. I wanted to do this one. I recorded this one before. This is the second take on this, and I did it, and it was like a 19-minute video, and it was really good. But I can only upload 15-minute videos. I don't know if that's because I'm going through the phone or what, but I'm gonna redo this. This is about Civil War. This is about Marvel's Civil War in 2006, and if I go a little bit fast, it's because I have to, because I can talk about this for hours. This really is probably the last great Marvel event that's come out. Everything after this has been very lackluster, and nothing's really had the impact that this did. And it's a sign of good writing. It's a mark of good writing. The really interesting thing about it is I've always thought of it as sort of an allegory for gun control, for gun rights. It's taken the gun and it made it into a person. But as I go back to it and read this thing, it's actually, I still think it's about that, but I still think, and I think now I see something deeper in it. I see sort of a warning about everything in this, every faction, everything, a lot of things in this book. Things become what they're not supposed to be, and I'll get into that in this thing. And it's really resounding today. It has impact today in 2018 Marvel. So I'll get into it. It's a really good book. I'm not going to spoil the whole thing. I'm not going to be like those guys out there who basically read the whole book, Comicstorian or whoever else does it. They give you no reason to go buy the book. And I want you to go out and buy the book. You can pick this up at basically any bookstore. You can get it online off of Amazon for cheaper. I want you to go buy this, so I'm not going to spoil the whole thing. I'm just going to give key points. So it starts out with the New Warriors, and the New Warriors have tracked down this group of supervillains who are hiding out. They're basically laying low, planning whatever they're going to do next. And this is where it starts. The New Warriors in this comic book have become something that they're not supposed to be. They've become a reality show. Instead of fighting crime, instead of doing good, and it's very distinct, they're chasing ratings. They're having trouble getting things filmed, so they track down these very major supervillains, because their ratings are slipping. So that's what, they're way out of their league, and they know it, and they even say it. So the fight ensues, and they got the drop on them, so they handled it pretty well, except for Nitro. Nitro gets loose. Namorita stops him and presses him up against a bus. I forget what his powers are exactly, but he's basically like a bomb. He's basically a living bomb. And he detonates himself, and that hits a gas main or something. It destroys the entire block. A lot of civilians were killed. And that's a result of this group of young superheroes, the New Warriors, becoming something that they're not supposed to be. And there's fallout from it. There's public fury. There's a situation where Johnny Storm is at a club, and he's a little flippant about the thing because the people at the club are a little pissed off about it, and they're saying stuff about it. And he winds up getting beaten up by people at this club. So that's something that the public has turned on the superheroes as well. Things have changed because something else became something it wasn't supposed to be. Now the public is changing. The public is turning, and they're not acting the way they normally do. So legislation starts to come up, and the outcry reaches the media. And the heroes, they're talking about registration. Now, registration has been, if you're an X-Men fan like I am, the registration is old wounds. But now all of these other superheroes have to talk about it, and they actually have a meeting to discuss it. While that meeting's going on at a S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, this is a major part of the story too, and it's kind of done so quickly you don't really notice it. What happens is Maria Hill goes to Cap and asks him what he thinks is going to happen in this situation. Now, Cap, being the neutral symbol that he is, he's Captain America. He tries not to comment on it, but she pushes him, and Finally, he gives his opinion. He thinks it's going to split him down the middle. Some are going to go with it and become registered, and other ones aren't. Maria Hill instantly assumes that Cap will help. She says, "Nobody you can't handle," right? She instantly assumes that Cap is going to become a police officer, rounding them up. That's not what Captain America is, and he's trying to be resistant to becoming something he isn't. Instantly, Maria Hill's task force that is specifically designed to take down superheroes shows up. This is a big shift. This is S.H.I.E.L.D., keeping with the theme of this video, S.H.I.E.L.D. becoming something that it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be outward looking, a protection agency for the public, for America. And instead, because of this incident, it's turned around and it's looking inward at the heroes. Instead of being protection agency, now they're enforcement. And in doing that and being so heavy-handed, they sort of forced Captain America's hand. And at the same time as they're deciding these things, and this is where Uatu shows up, the Watcher shows up at the superhero meeting. Now, he doesn't say anything. In the Marvel Universe, when he shows up, he is just the Watcher. He doesn't really say anything. He doesn't really comment on anything. He doesn't say, "Hey, if you do this, that's gonna screw this up." He's just watching. But if he shows up, you can tell it's a significant part of what's going on in the Marvel continuity when he shows up. So the legislation passes, and now the ball really gets rolling in a strange direction. There's an underground Avengers, and Captain America is sort of the de facto head of it. And once again, it's not what Captain America's supposed to be. Captain America, his whole costume, there's nothing covert about it. It's big A, big red, white, and blue shield. That's not what he's supposed to be. He's not supposed to be the underground leader. And S.H.I.E.L.D., in the enforcement of this Registration Act, starts to act like the bad guys, like trying to capture Patriot. They wind up blowing up an entire floor of a building. That's something a supervillain would do to get a villain that they were fighting. Within all this, Reed Richards, who is a scientist, he's a super scientist for the betterment of society. Suddenly he starts working on this thing called Plan 42, which is a prison. It's a mega prison built in the negative zone to house the rebel superheroes. Once again, Reed Richards becoming something he's not, because this chain reaction of so many other things becoming what they're not has forced Reed Richards to do this, and now he's doing this. Reed also goes to Wakanda, to T'Challa, Black Panther, over in Wakanda, and asks him for help in rounding up these rebel superheroes. Now, T'Challa is resistant to it, and and that is within character for him. He's not going to police people of another country. That's not what he's about. That's not what he's into. I think one of the more interesting things in this book is when Peter Parker came out and revealed himself publicly. The neat thing was, it's a really cool scene with J. Jonah Jameson. But if you follow the Spider-Man books of this series, he gets sued by the Bugle for the things that he did, selling basically pictures of himself for so many years. I found that to be a really, really neat part of this story. So the legislation winds up passing, the superhero registration. I keep trying to say mutant registration, but superhero registration passes. And this is something that's not what it's supposed to be. This is the government passing legislation specifically targeting one group of people in America. That's not what the government is supposed to do. They're not supposed to govern like that. They're not supposed to make laws like that. And this was pushed and backed by Tony Stark as well. Once again, could you imagine Tony Stark, the billionaire playboy, kind of does his own thing, the rebel, suddenly pushing for legislation? It's Tony Stark becoming, because of this one thing, the thing that started the chain reaction, the New Warriors changing and becoming something that they're not supposed to be. This chain reaction is starting, and Captain America has become sort of an underground beacon for all these other heroes who are going underground. And the chain reaction just keeps going to where Tony Stark is now talking about legislation and pushing legislation to sort of curtail his own colleagues, his superheroes. So they kind of get to the X-Men after this, and the X-Men were just decimated by, I forget what was going on, but they choose to remain neutral. They have Sentinels basically standing over their shoulders almost all the time. So their numbers have been decimated from events in this Marvel Universe, but they decide to stay out when really this registration is old. It's old news to them. It's old wounds to them. So they aren't really doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is to stand up and fight against this, but they have their reasons. So the book gets to the first major fight, and this is the culmination of a lot of things that have gone on. As you wind up Tony setting a trap for the Secret Avengers. In the fight, you see things that aren't really supposed to happen, like Cap using a trick to disable Tony's armor for a while. That's not like Captain America to use things like that. That's not the way he fights, sort of underhanded. So all of these things have kind of forced him to be like that. In the fight, Thor returns. Thor was dead at the time, and he winds up killing Goliath. Now, it turns out that Hank Pym and Reed Richards were working on this cloned Thor. They found a hair of Thor's from the first time they met him, and they cloned that hair, and they made this like sort of android cyborg version of Thor. Well, because it doesn't have a conscience, it winds up killing Goliath, just blasting right through his chest. Once again, it's Reed Richards and Hank Pym not doing the things that they're supposed to be doing, which is science for the betterment of the world. They've created this Frankenstein-like monster, and it gets out of hand. So that event really shook up the group, and both groups. You see people switching sides. Some people realizing that we're going too far with this. Others are like, the other side is too powerful. You also see, further keeping with the theme of things becoming what they're not supposed to be, S.H.I.E.L.D. bringing in the Thunderbolts, having villains work for them to capture the Secret Avengers. The Secret Avengers also having villains come to them to join, which is very short-lived because the Punisher kills them. Now that also is something becoming what it's not supposed to be. Cap isn't supposed to let somebody like the Punisher be on his team. And vice versa. The Punisher is always that lone wolf who kind of takes justice in his own hands. He's not supposed to seek out a team to be with, and it's very, very weird on both sides. So I'm gonna wrap this up. I want to reflect on the warning that this was in 2016 of things becoming what they're not supposed to be, and we're even seeing this in our world today, such as the British police. I just read an article about the British police investigating somebody who did a supposed mean tweet. We're seeing in our schools, and we've been seeing this for a decade or so, they're afraid to question ideas. They're afraid of the challenge of questioning, maybe my ideals aren't exactly right. Maybe this one that we've held for a long time isn't exactly right. Tech companies, as we see now, becoming the arbiters of free speech on the internet. That's not what they're supposed to do. Just make sure your app works. Don't ban Sargon of Akkad. Don't tell me that this was offensive and this isn't. Don't tell me that celebrities with blue check marks calling for violence and the doxing of high school kids, don't tell me that's not a violation and something else is. You're not the one who decides that. On a comic book level, closer to home, Marvel becoming a lifestyle brand. That's not what they're supposed to be. Just put out a good comic. You've kind of forgotten how to do that. And you're starting to see you're starting to reap the rewards of that, which are incredibly low sales, and I'm sure layoffs will have to come soon. But that's all I got for this one. I'm getting close to 15 minutes. I got to wrap it up. Thanks for watching, everybody. Go out and buy this comic book. You can find it at bookstores. You can find it online on Amazon. Thanks for watching. Tell me what you think in the comments. Tell me if I missed anything. And as always, go have a good day and go out and be what you're supposed to be.